bump day. Never has simply qualifying for a motor race been so gratifying or desolating. Having to qualify for one of the biggest events on the racing calendar with the risk of several months, perhaps even years of work, going for nothing. Missing out on the privilege of taking part in the greatest spectacle in racing. And if that tension wasn't enough, the task of qualifying itself is a mammoth undertaking. Completing 4 laps at over 220 miles an hour with the car on the ragged edge, and the knowledge that if something goes wrong, it'll be highly unlikely to be a small off. And of course, if you aren't fast enough, you've got to do that process multiple times, just to have a chance of either racing or going home. From a fan's perspective, this is undoubtedly incredibly exciting, with drama almost guaranteed. And indeed this day has produced its fair share of surprises, because no driver is immune from going home. However, one year in particular had a rather remarkable outcome that seemed beyond all realms of fathomability. We're going back to 2010, the penultimate year of the Dallara IR05 chassis being used in IndyCar competition. A total of 37 cars were entered into the month of May proceedings, but as any Indy 500 fan will know, only 33 cars were guaranteed to make the start, which means that on bump day, we would see 4 cars going home. One car that we weren't expecting to have any fears of not qualifying was Tony Kanaan. He had by this point been a runner-up and a regularly high qualifier for this race, along with being a fan favourite, and indeed the speed seemed there in practice too. In fact, on Thursday practice, he was the fastest, so we can rule him out for any bump day drama. Or as it turned out, we couldn't. During the pole day runs, Kanaan lost it coming out of turn 1, mashing his foot on the gas in the forlorn hope of avoiding the turn 2 wall, destroying his car, and with no time on the board, guaranteed to be in the bump day proceedings the following day. But still, the backup car should still be fast enough to at least make the race without any fears. But in the morning practice session the following day, Tony crashed at the same corner. Now there was a rush to get Tony a car that could make a run for the bump day proceedings, which worked like this. The drivers in the top 24 positions had been confirmed the day prior, which left 9 more places available in the field. The drivers vying for a spot in the race were Vitor Meira, Alex Lloyd, Takuma Sato, Milka Duno, John Andretti, Sarah Fisher, Paul Tracy, Bruno Junqueira, Jay Howard, Mario Romancini, Sebastian Saavedra, Tony Kanaan, and AJ Foyt IV, albeit he would be replaced by Jacques Lazier for bump day. The drivers would set times at 12 PM local time, before breaking the proceedings for practice runs for the whole field. Qualifications would then recommence later in the day for drivers to try and get into the race. Once the initial runs had been completed, Junqueira, Lloyd, Andretti, Fisher and Meira had put in 4 lap averages that would get them into the race. The driver in the crucial 33rd position was Saavedra, with a 223.634 mph 4 lap average. Saavedra was in his first IndyCar start, and so was the team he was racing for, Brian Herter Autosport. Perhaps not a massive surprise then that they were one of the cars that were likely to struggle. The time though may have proved unlikely to get them through, because Tony hadn't yet completed a run, and his backup car would end up getting repaired. During practice though, things would get significantly worse for the Colombian. During practice, Sebastian would lose the car out of turn 1 and would destroy his car. He would get out of the car, but would end up going to hospital all the same, and therefore would not be able to make another qualifying attempt. And so, Kanaan would head out for what he hoped would be his only run, and that would go by without issue. Anything above a 4 lap average of 224 mph would realistically be enough to get Tony safely in the field, and whilst it wasn't without its scares, the popular Brazilian would do enough, setting a 4 lap average of 224.075 mph, and for the time being would end up in 30th place. This would therefore put Saavedra out of the top 33, and, realistically, out of the Indy 500. The new 33rd place driver was another Brazilian in Mario Romancini for Conquest Racing. However, he would make another attempt, and this time would set an average nearly a full mile an hour faster than his previous effort, a 224.641 mph, putting him 27th and being able to relax a little easier. One driver who was out of the race so far was Takuma Sato. However, he too would find the speed that would help him get into the race, a 4 lap average of 224.178 mph, putting him 31st. Now it was British driver Jay Howard who was bumped out of the race, with Paul Tracy in the precarious 33rd place, with less than 15 minutes left to go. Jay had to go again and improve on his average of 223.824 miles per hour. Would he set a speed faster than Tracy's 223.892? Well, the first few laps were on the very edge of making it in, but by the third lap, his average was below Tracy. And then on the last lap, he lifted off out of turn 3, losing yet more speed. And in the end, his 4-lap average was 223.610, which had actually put him lower in the field, behind Savage's attempt. Tracy though was still in the 33rd position, and knew that if Howard or indeed anybody else trying to qualify were faster, they may not have time to respond, with around 10 minutes left. So with the intention of putting in a more comfortable speed, Tracy, driving for KV Racing Technology, went out onto the track to try and do just that. However, by withdrawing his original speed, the risks couldn't have been any higher if the speed didn't materialise. Before his attempt even started though, he had a rather sketchy moment on the exit of turn 3, nearly clipping the wall. However, when he did start his run though, if you thought that moment was tense, that hasn't got a patch on what happened at the same corner on the first lap, getting the rear end loose on the exit and somehow managing to avoid hitting anything. As impressive a save as it was, whilst it may have looked spectacular, that wasn't optimal for speed, and it showed. His first lap was slower than his 4-lap average speed on his original attempt, and lap 2 was just above 223 miles an hour. His third lap wasn't run, as they aborted the run midway through, and Paul came back to pit road to try and make another attempt. However, with 6.5 minutes remaining, would there be enough time? At this point, Paul had not got an official time, as his original run was withdrawn, and he aborted his second attempt. This meant that on the bubble in 33rd place, miraculously, was Sebastian Savager. But despite the frankly unbelievable circumstances of actually getting back into the race, despite having not done another run since his original attempt earlier in the day, there was still enough time for him to be bumped out again. Jacques Lazier was back out for another try, but even before he could start his attempt, Jacques had a massively hair-raising moment in turn 3, the car wanting to brake sideways, but did a great job of not crashing the car. The thing is though, despite the save, the run was over before it started, and there was no time for another attempt, so Jacques wouldn't qualify. What about another driver trying to make their way in? Mil Caduno was up next, but that attempt too was over fairly quickly. A 219.429 miles per hour first lap, and that would be the only lap of the attempt she would complete, heading for the pits afterwards, which with just under 2 minutes left on the clock, left time for just one more run, and Tracy wouldn't be able to make another attempt, so he too was out. This just left Jay Howard for Sarah Fisher Racing to make an attempt, and bump his way into the 500. And as the time clocked to 0 and Jay started his run, did he have enough speed? His first lap, 223.812. Enough so far, but the speed usually gets less as the run goes on. However, would it at least be a steady drop-off? The answer became much clearer on the completion of lap 2. A 223.270. And with a 222.813 on lap 3, Jay and Sebastian's fate for who would make the race was sealed. A 223.120 mph 4-lap average for Jay Howard would mean that Sebastian Savager would end up competing in the 500 despite having a crashed car and being bumped out for a while. Obviously, for 4 drivers, the privilege of competing in the greatest spectacle in racing wasn't going to happen for this year, and that of course is a crushing feeling. However, in my opinion, never has there ever been a more unbelievable way of qualifying for a motor race. In terms of big name surprises going home, sure there have been bigger shocks to have not made the race, but never has an entry into the Indy 500 had more of a rollercoaster of emotions than this one. This moment has often been coined the bump day miracle, and it's not hard at all to see why. Savager's race would end on lap 161 with an accident. He was okay and would go on to make 63 IndyCar starts in his career. A career that never really took off, but this moment would cement his place in the rich history of this incredible race. But what other major surprises from Bump Day do you remember most? Say down in the comment section below. In the meantime, if you did enjoy this video, then I'd be enormously appreciative if you did hit the like and subscribe buttons. However, until the next video, be kind to each other and enjoy the rest of your day.